In the heart of the forest, legends awaken from the shadows. The tales of Sasquatch echo through time, a mystery that remains unsolved.
As the smoke clears, the sign stands resolute, a beacon of intrigue. What secrets lie within the forest's depths? The quest for truth begins at Sasquatch Watch Radio. Here's Billy Willard and Gary Kendrick.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is January 13th, 2025. Welcome to season 2025. And we have a wonderful guest on tonight, Mr. Todd Prescott, as many know, is 2024 Bigfooter of the Year. So we will bring him on here in just a few minutes. Before we do that, let's get our other host in here, Gary Kendrick.
Hey, Billy.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. If I can take just a minute, I'd just like to send out, our severe or serious condolences to Ken Gearhart. His father passed away this morning. Hate to hear that. Ken, if you're out there, we're praying for you, brother.
Yep, so sorry to hear about that. Thoughts and prayers are with you, Ken.
Amen.
And so, without further ado, let's get our guest in here tonight, Todd Prescott in his gaming chair, man. Check that chair out.
Yeah, I got to say, Billy, that intro was epic.
I appreciate it.
I couldn't stop. I got the chills. I got the shivers. I felt like I was in the movie theater. I had my chair kicked back.
Yeah, see, now I need like a nice video set of Todd Prescott, out searching, Bigfooter of the Year and neon lights.
Oh, I'd rather see Todd playing the drums.
Yeah, we could do that.
Twirling my sticks.
There you go.
Or maybe wood knockers.
First question, do you play matched grip or the old style?
I play matched grip. I've tried traditional, as it's called, but that to me only makes sense if you're marching with a drum and you have it slung to the side, because being a guy, you don't want it slamming into that thing in the middle there that makes babies. So, that's why they did that, right? That's why they had that hand that way, because the drum was, cocked that way. So, I play match grip. It makes more sense on a conventional drum kit.
I used to do some drumming back in the day, and I was a match grip man myself.
You look like a drummer, I got to say. You got the look.
Well, you can go at it, Gary. It's your role, man.
All right. Well, everybody knows Todd Prescott. I mean, man don't need a whole lot of introduction. Todd's been an author. One of the greatest achievements is the Sasquatch Archives. I find it absolutely fascinating. I'm going to get into it tonight, and I'm going to head straight to some serious business. Can you tell us about the Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin interview that you have from October the 26th of 1967?
Yeah, that's an interesting piece, I have to say. It was, as you said, recorded on October 26th, 1967, which of course was 6 days after the film was made. So you get Roger and Bob with the event fresh in their minds, very fresh. And we really have to pay attention to that because things have morphed a little bit over time with different articles and memory lapses and whatnot. So it's an important piece. And I found that, thanks to John Green, I found it in his collection when I visited with him back first in 2012. And he had a whole whack of cassette interviews, including that one. And to my knowledge, it had never surfaced publicly. John had a copy, but John wasn't in a position to make it public. I'm sure he mailed it out to a few people here and there. My understanding is that he recorded it, or someone he knows recorded it on that day on a radio program. I've been told that Patricia Patterson has a copy too. I know that Bobby Short, the late researcher who had a website and was pretty active at certain times, she obviously had a copy because she has a transcription on her website of the interview. So there's no doubt that the cassette changed hands, because back then it was, you dubbed the cassette and you passed them around. But it was quite nice to find that, and with John's permission, he said, "Go ahead, put it up on whatever you can, make it public." So I just had to digitalize it because that's the only way I'm going to get online, make it into an MP3. But it's a fantastic piece of history, in my opinion. It really is. I just wish I don't have the full interview. No one seems to have the full interview. I'm guessing that I have most of it, judging by what was said and where the interview was going. But we're missing a portion of it. How much, I don't know. But I don't think it's much that we're missing. So if anyone out there has it, get in contact with Billy or me or Gary.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, me too.
And I mean, the part that you have has some really fascinating information in it.
Sure does. It sure does.
I know. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, some people have complained about the interviewer, Jack Webster, an old Scottish guy from Canada, because he was cutting them off. But the thing that made him famous was he would really get in there, really dig, and put you on the spot. And if you were lying, he'd catch you in that lie easily.
Oh, yeah.
So he put the pressure on Bob and Roger, and I think they held up very well, including not agreeing on some points. And my thinking is, if it was a hoax, which I don't believe it was, why would they disagree on some of the aspects? Because I know if you're planning a hoax, you're going to sit down, you're going to work out every last detail. And I highly doubt they said, well, let's disagree on this and let's disagree on that. I highly doubt that, because then people call into question. You're not agreeing. So what did you actually see? So it really shows legitimacy, in my opinion, to what happened on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Next question. What sparked the idea for Sasquatch Archives, your YouTube page?
That's a great question. And it just happened by chance because I had visited John Green quite a few times over a 3-year period. I realized just how much material he had and the potential to share that with his permission, of course. And he was all about sharing. If there was anyone out there who wanted to share his stuff, he always welcomed people into his home, speak to you on the phone, hundreds of, if not thousands of communications through letters, handwritten letters or typed letters. In the case of John, because he was a journalist, most of the stuff was typed up. And so I thought there's a lot of stuff here. And of course, when I found the whole box of interviews, because it's not just the Roger Patterson, Bob Gillen interview, there's Fred Beck and Roger Patterson. And there's other interviews too that haven't seen the light of day because it takes time. But I thought I need to showcase this somehow. I could try to start a web page or a website rather, but that I'm not good at that. YouTube was taking off at the time. It seemed like the most practical platform for all the video material, for the audio material, and in some respects, the letters as well. The letters is a little more challenging to show in video form, but I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to read out some of the letters, read aloud some of the letters. I think people will enjoy that. But yeah, the website just seemed too challenging for me. And, you have to pay for it. And you have to maintain it. You can get a virus. People can hack into it and make it a mess. And it can be hard to find stuff. It's hard to catalog that stuff on a web page or website, in my opinion. I think it's much easier on YouTube with playlists to do it that way. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was just all the material that was there that John Green had. And then eventually I came into possession of John Furman's files. John Furman is one of these people that few know about, but he was the glue between Peter Byrne, John Green, Renee DeHinden, who were all fighting at the time. John Furman was able to navigate between those men and stay friends with each and every one of them, everyone that was anybody back then. He was in contact with, and he was sort of the news hound. He would send them newspaper, magazine clippings, and they really appreciated him. He wasn't much of a field researcher, but he was an important figure. And I hadn't heard of him until I met with Chris Murphy, and he mentioned this guy named John Furman. I went, who? Like, that's how anonymous he was, kind of. But he's he's in the John Green files, and I asked John about him, and he said, yeah, we needed that guy. He was really important. He unfortunately died in, we think, 1989. We think he took his own life, which was sad. He was a very gifted fiddle player, actually, extremely world-class fiddle player, and he was on a TV show in Portland. But yeah, so I acquired his files through Chris Murphy, and it's the original files. With John Green, I have scans of his files and copies of the recordings, and then copies of his negatives, his photos, and his slides. Not much in the way of the original material that went to one of the museums in BC after John's passing. But, I acquired John Furman's files. I acquired another researcher's files around the same time. So I thought I need to do something to share this with the general public. It'll help further the research. That's my hope, at least. But it's very time consuming, I have to say. Even before this, this interview started, I was over on my left here, scanning some books that I just got in the mail. Like I scan the covers and I file them away, and scanning some magazine articles to file away, and eventually they'll be shared too. So yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. So I'm doing it to hopefully share with people, and because I love it too. I mean, I have to admit, I really love doing it. I do.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I really do.
I appreciate that.
Todd, if you can you tell us a little bit about your research while you were traveling with a band, and did the areas that the band toured have any influence on you joining that band?
Well, that's funny. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Especially when I joined a band in the mid 90s in British Columbia. My dream and goal was to move to British Columbia. But as a struggling musician in Ontario, Canada, which is a long ways away from British Columbia, I didn't know how I was going to get there and how I was going to survive out there, because obviously we all need to have some income, and musicians don't tend to make much money unless you're well known, let's say. So I was playing in a cover band and jobbing around in cover bands and doing the odd pickup job here and there, maybe moving furniture, various things, delivering mail, not officially, but the ad mail that you hate, the junk mail, stuff like that, like jobs that people didn't really want to do. And I got a call from some old college friends who had moved out to British Columbia to work out there, because the music scene had kind of dried up a lot in Ontario, where we went from playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to just playing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I thought, what am I going to do here? I'm living in someone's basement. If my car breaks down, I'm toast. I don't have any money to do repairs. So I got a call to join a band in British Columbia, and I jumped at that opportunity. Packed up my things, drove out in a YJ Jeep all through Canada, took my drums and some belongings, and I moved into the garage that the house was attached to. That was my room, and slept on the garage floor. I mean, they kind of finished it, like make it a room with carpet, but it was hot and not well ventilated. But I was in British Columbia, and we were touring all through that province. And if you know anything about Sasquatch research history, British Columbia is the place.
Oh, yeah.
I would say it's more important than even Bluff Creek, if I dare say. If it weren't for the Patterson-Gimlin film, of course, it would be the place. But that's where the word Sasquatch originated in British Columbia through J.W. Burns, John Walter Burns. But being out there was surreal. I'll be honest with you. It was a dream. It was hard to believe I was there. Coming from Ontario and being born and raised in Ontario, you don't see mountains. We're a fairly flat province, except for the northern part, which gets quite hilly, but we don't have mountains. We don't have the Rocky Mountains or the coastal mountains. So just even driving out there, I went, oh my God, now I get it. I understand completely and fully. Although I was convinced that Sasquatch exists, now I fully understand how they can exist. Because when you see those old growth forests and all the untouched land, it's overwhelming. But yeah, we were touring all through the province, going to some of the hot spots, I'd say. Harrison Hot Springs, where John Green was living. Yale, British Columbia. Parts of the island where there's been sightings. Prince George, Prince Rupert, you name it. So when I got into those towns, we'd sound check and then play our first night. And I would go to bed right after the gig. Everyone else was up partying, drinking, partying. I'm like, nah, that's not for me. I'd go back and crash, get up early in the morning, because I could only go out in the morning and afternoon. So I was out early, climbing mountains, going on game trails back in the woods. No GPS, no cell phone, no infrared, no headlamp, but it was never dark when I was out. But I went out by myself, which may have been foolish, but I was, as they say, full of something and something. But I was brazen and never had any problems. Never saw a mountain lion, never saw a bear. But yeah, it was amazing. And eventually I had a couple days off, so I went to Harrison Hot Springs to call John Green. And anyone who's heard me talk before, it's a funny story because John Green, I knew him from his books and on documentaries. I went to a phone booth because this is before cell phones, and you go to the phone booth, there'd be a phone book there. You'd put I think it was a quarter, 25 cents at the time in Canada. And look, John Green's name up in the book, and there he is, whatever his number was. Put the quarter in, rotary dial, and it might have been the push button at that time. It may have been a push button one. I can't remember. And he picked up. I heard his voice. It rang twice or 3 times. He picked up. He's like, "Hello," and I freaked out and I hung up. I guess starstruck is all I could say. But part of me, as I'm dialing, I'm thinking, why am I bothering this old man? Because he was pretty old at that time to me. He was probably in his 60s, which seemed old to me being in my 20s. And I thought, what am I doing? I don't know this guy. I shouldn't bother him. He's had a long life. Leave him alone. Of course, I regretted hanging up on him, but eventually I met him in 2012. But as I always say, everything happens for a reason. Had I met John in 1995 when I was out there, 96, things may have gone a different way for me. I think that because I didn't know John, really know him, I was able to slide in, so to speak, at a time in his life where he wanted to share as much as he could. And he wanted company. Because when I went to visit John Green in 2012, 2013, 2014, we talked for hours. He was lonely. His wife had passed away. He was living in an old age home. He was lonely. He took me to every lunch and dinner that he ate in the home, introduced me to all the other people, but he had really nothing in common with the people there because he was a Sasquatch researcher. That was his labor of love. And everyone else was, waiting for their time to pass. John was in relatively good shape when I saw him. He was booting down the hallways like he was in his 50s. But then time caught up with him. But anyways, yeah, taking that gig was the best thing I did. I wanted to stay. Gary, Billy, I wanted to stay there. And the band, and this is advice to any musician, never join a band where 2 people are married in the band. The singer was married to the guitar player. And you know where this is going to go.
Oh yeah.
So anywho, they started having problems. The band split up. Now I've got no income. Now you said you played drums before, Gary. I saw an ad in the trade paper for a drum teacher wanted, and I had lots of experience teaching drums. I called the guy up. He says, "Yeah, if you had a call me yesterday, you'd have the job because you have way more credentials and experience and education than the guy I just hired yesterday. But I've already committed to him." So I went, "Okay, I'm done here. Like, there's nothing for me." I tried to find work, but there just wasn't anything going on. Had to ship back to Ontario. It was a real shame, but everything happens for a reason.
Oh yeah, it's interesting life though.
Absolutely, any Sasquatch researcher has an interesting life. Let's be honest here. Every one of us has an interesting life.
Got a question from the audience here, Todd. If you don't care, question for Todd. This is from Mick. When are you going to launch the inaugural Sasquatch Archive weekend gathering in Ontario?
Let me start by saying, Mick, I appreciate you and I appreciate your wisdom and all your comments and your support because I'm conversing back and forth through the comments on my YouTube channel with Mick. So I really appreciate everything that he brings forth because he's very knowledgeable. So, I've considered hosting a Bigfoot conference in Ontario. To be honest with you, I have. But it's so much work. Billy, it's so much work. Gary, I'm sure you know too. It's so much work. And I just don't have the time. I've met with some people here in Ontario and gone out with them, bushwhacking, so to speak, field researching or just hanging out. But Yeah, I don't think I'll ever do a Bigfoot conference here. It's just so much work. But maybe a gathering. But Mick, I don't think you're in Ontario. I don't think Mick's in Ontario. I think he's somewhere else, but maybe I'm mistaken.
With the theme of being a musician, can you tell us about the Switch Beats?
Oh, well, that's a band I play in right now. I've played it with this band since 2019, and then COVID hit the next year. But it's a pop rock cover band that it's extra income for me. You know, we gig on the weekends mostly. They're a great bunch of people, like family. Last night we got together at the singer's place and had a bit of a post-Christmas party. So I really appreciate that band. Great musicians. Everyone has a formal education in music, so we can all speak the same language. But yeah, Switchbeat is just one of the many bands that I have played in over the years, but it is my only band at the moment, and I love those guys and gal. No one's married in that band.
It's got to be a good band, because when I was doing research on you, just for kicks, I typed in Todd Prescott musician, and boom, here was article after article after article on Switchbeat.
Yeah, they have been around for a while, and they are. I don't mean to boast or brag. I'm certainly not one of the original members. I'm the most recent member. So all credit goes to them. They are an amazing band, and they get a lot of great reviews. They really do. People love them because our singer is dynamite. She's unbelievable. Best singer I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of singers, including celebrities.
Wow.
I think me and Thomas Steinberg have come to the conclusion that you might be the fifth Beatle.
No, I think that their producer was the fifth Beatle. Maybe I'm the sixth. No, I'm not in any league of that caliber. No. The Beatles are unbelievably amazing.
Todd, I know you've worked with a lot of the original Sasquatch investigators from Canada. I know you worked with Renee Hendon some, John Green, and all the earlier researchers. What was it like to work with all these earlier researchers?
Well, honestly, the only one I worked with was John Green. Renee DeHinden, I only spoke with him once on the telephone. That was it. And I've said this before many times. His brashness turned me off so much. And I was a kid. I was young. I was in my 20s, and it was 1997. I had moved back to Ontario, but I was planning a solo expedition to look for Sasquatch in a place called Bella Coola, which is central coastal British Columbia. It's extremely remote, but it is the one place that Renee DeHinden writes in his book, his one and only book, really, because there was a second edition, his one and only book, that this is the place that you'll have the greatest chance of seeing a Sasquatch. And I thought, that's where I got to go then. Like, Renee is the man. This is where I got to go. But in speaking with him, because again, he was in the phone book. And when I was in BC in 95, 96, I wrote down his number. But I didn't look him up then. Because again, I was gun shy. No pun intended there, Gary. I was gun shy because we talked about that earlier. But anyways, I never looked him up because I thought, I'm just going to do the same thing I did with Green. I'll get goosebumps and I'll hang up. But I did call Renee. Cold called him in 1997. It would have been probably February 97, because I'd already initiated this trip, planning this trip, which was a lot of planning, to go to Bella Coola, because I mean, you could drive there, but it's not a fun drive. So I flew to Vancouver, and then I took a charter plane up to Bella Coola. Anyways, back to Renee. Renee, when I talked to him, he was so gruff, so bitter, so jaded, so brash. I hate to say it, but I couldn't wait to get off the phone with him. It was a hard conversation to have. I like to stay positive and be a positive person. But I respected him for his knowledge and experience. But it was a difficult conversation. But he did give me some great advice. And I said to him, Renee, when I get out of the woods of Bella Coola, I'll call you again and I'll take you out for lunch as a token of my appreciation for your time. I never did that. I kind of feel bad because I didn't promise him, but he was probably waiting for that meal because Renee was hurting financially. He could have used that meal for sure. So I kind of feel bad. And again, what would have happened had I followed up with that. I don't know. Maybe I would have walked out there disgruntled myself, because he was at a point where he was not fun to be around. He was a very negative person at that time. May he rest in peace. I hate to say anything negative about someone who's not here to defend themselves, but he'd be the first person to say he was jaded, right? That's the thing. That's the truth. So John Green is the only one. I mean, Thomas Steenberg I've hung out with, Chris Murphy, although many wouldn't consider Chris one of the forerunners, but he was in the game fairly early and did a lot. I'm trying to think, is there anyone else from that earlier period? I would have met Bob Titmus had I followed through with my call to John Green in 95. Because even Green told me in 2012 when we first met, I told him the story about hanging up on him. He didn't remember because, it was a long time ago. But he said, if you had to follow through, you would have met Bob Titmus because he was living across the street from me. So there were many missed opportunities for me. I met Bob Gimlin, as many of us have, and I've hung out with him. I've watched UFC fights with Bob because he's a big UFC fan, Ultimate Fighting Championship, and boxing fan. And so sometimes he just doesn't want to talk about Bigfoot. So here we are watching a boxing match in UFC in a hotel room in Lake Chautauqua, right?
Yep.
And I've been in touch with a lot of the old timers through email who were still living, because I was working on a book series about researchers that I never followed through with. You're seeing a bit of a pattern here. So someone else, Tim Halloran, has put out a wonderful book on Bigfoot researchers, and he's going to be doing a series. So he kind of did what I planned to do, and probably way better than I could do. But I have a whole list, like a database of researchers, their contacts and stuff. And I started the series. I just never completed it. And here's why. Because people would say, if you mention so-and-so, take me out of your book.
Yep.
I'm like, wait a second. They're a researcher just as much as you are. You may not agree with their philosophy, but I just couldn't believe it. So I went, you know what? I guess that's it, because if so-and-so, and I'm not going to mention names, if so-and-so refuses to be in the book, if so-and-so is mentioned, then I'm leaving out people. And Chris Murphy fell for that with John Green. When Chris Murphy first put out when he was writing his Meet the Sasquatch book, John Green took a look and said, take Peter Byrne out, or I want nothing to do with this book. And Murphy conceded because he didn't want to tick off John Green. Yeah. And then he regretted doing that, and then he put out his Know the Sasquatch book, which includes everyone. And Murphy said, I'm sorry, John. And John Green threw the book at him, literally threw a physical copy of the book at Chris Murphy's head. He was so upset by that. So I've only truly, worked with John Green in so much as gone through his files. I went out researching with John Green, believe it or not. He and I went out one night up on the hills of Harrison Hot Springs. It was unbelievable. And I've got the audio and video. Someday I'll release that. But it's thermal. It's thermal video, thermal imaging. And I've got the audio. But John was in his 80s, and he's up there walking around with me and telling me stories. But yeah, I can't say. I just want to correct you on that. I don't want people to think that I know Thomas Steenberg's got his pipe going, Prescott didn't know all those old guys. I know I was
going to say we need to bring him on here so he can do the Renee DeHenden. He's good at doing Renee.
That's a good impersonation.
He spent so much time with Renee. I spent one conversation with Renee, and that's it.
All right. Well, we're at the halfway point of the hour. So, Todd, remember I asked you about your music.
Yes.
So we had AI create a song about Todd Prescott.
Whoa.
And let's see here. All right. Y'all ready? Here we go.
I'm looking forward to this, man.
Scott took his bag and boots, journey of legends and wild pursuit, into the north where forests hide, a tale of mystery and endless pride. Canada's wild with shadows that creep, Sasquatch whispers while we're asleep, campfires burning, lights in the mist, echoes of secrets that none can dismiss. Chasing shadows in the midnight air, Todd's on a mission, fully aware. In the woodland lands where dreams aren't found, the quest for a Sasquatch will surely astound. Snow-capped peaks and pine needle floors, footprints hidden behind ancient doors. Todd's compass points to fate unknown, where the cryptid legend has grown. Northern lights dancing above the pines, guiding our hero through the signs. In every rustle the answers might lie, under the enchanted Canadian sky. Chasing shadows in the midnight air, Todd's on a mission, fully aware. In the woodlands where dreams aren't found, the quest for a Sasquatch will surely astound. Northern lights dancing above the pines, guiding our hero through the signs. In every rustle the answers might lie, under the enchanted Canadian sky. Chasing shadows in the midnight air, Todd's on a mission, fully aware. In the woodlands where dreams aren't found, the quest for a Sasquatch will surely astound.
There it is.
Wow. That was impressive.
That was reminiscent of the Cars from back in the day.
It's a hit. It's a hit. Yeah. Wow. Good job. I like that, Billy.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
I'll send that to you.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I'll make a video out of it on my channel.
That would be awesome.
I'll give you all the songwriting credits, though, Billy.
Okay.
That was fantastic, though. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Todd, and sticking with the early researchers, what do you think the friction among the early researchers was?
Yeah, only they know. But I mean, John Green, and Renee DeHinden both, they expressed what the dissatisfaction was with one another. Really, Renee didn't want to share any of the materials or evidence. He wanted to keep it close for whatever reason, where John was more open. He wanted to share everything. So that created conflict. With John Green and Peter Byrne, and Bob Titmus and Peter Byrne, and Renee DeHinden and Peter Byrne, and others with Peter Byrne, they didn't trust him. They just didn't trust him. Here comes, an Irishman with a slick accent, khaki pants, a safari hat, coming into their home turf, debonair. The ladies loved him, like they loved him. I've got letters written by Maggie Titmus, who was Bob Titmus's wife, saying how handsome Peter Byrne is or was. So maybe that caused some friction. Maybe they didn't like that Peter Byrne was Tom Pate or what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Tom Slick. I almost said
Tom Slick. Yeah.
Almost said Tom Page, who was someone else. Tom Slick, his right-hand man for many years. And everyone was making some money off of Tom Slick. So Peter Byrne might have been competition, but I just think that with we see friction nowadays. You're going to have it. And it's not only in Sasquatch research, it's in UFO research. It's in paranormal research. You're going to have differences of opinions. I think, too, part of it was, especially with Renee, he wanted to be the one to solve the mystery. And he wanted everything that came along with it. He was chasing the dollar. He really was. He was always looking for his next paycheck, struggling financially, living in. He's the first van life guy, right? Now we have all these YouTube videos on van life. Well, he's the originator. He was doing it before anyone else. People were doing it back then, but he really was doing it. He was doing it. But I just think that we still have that. It's nothing new. But with Green and DeHinden, it was a matter of what will we share, what won't we share. DeHinden was so brash. Green was more conservative. It was hard for them to get along. But even when they were fighting, the next day, Renee would call him up and say, "Hey, are we still going out boating?" Like, I have letters. Renee is threatening to sue Green.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next letter is, "Thanks for having me over for dinner. I really appreciate that."
Yep.
So it was, and I've said this before, I called them Lanky and Cranky. Lanky being Green and Cranky being DeHinden. And they were like an old married couple. They loved each other. They hated each other. They could not live with or without each other. It was a funny situation. Peter Byrne, that was a different thing altogether. Maybe some jealousy, maybe mistrust. Well, both of those things, I believe. Other people that didn't get along. I mean, there was an old guy that people just thought he was kind of loony, if I could say that word. Eric Beckjord, he just ruffled people's feathers because he came in with all these outlandish ideas and was pretty aggressive with things and would try to crash some of the conferences and make a scene. So you have those people too that are attention seekers. It's a combination of many things, but again, not to sound like a broken record, but we still have that going on today.
Yep,
Oh, yeah.
we do.
Oh, yeah. Todd, I try to ask every guest that we have this question. It's odd, but I'll explain it as I go along.
Sure.
Animal, mineral, or vegetable? Animal, do you think that Sasquatch is a living physical animal?
Yes,
Mineral,
I
do you
do.
think that Bigfoot is interdimensional or extraterrestrial? Or vegetable, do you think it might be spiritual?
I think it's flesh and blood at this point in my life and with the research I've done. And the reason being is because, I mean, I'll admit that there's high strangeness that seems to accompany Sasquatch research, but I can't say with any certainty that it's Sasquatch that's creating this. I just think the woods are a mysterious place, and there's a reason we got out of them. They hold power and mysteries that we just don't fully understand. But Sasquatch, very few reports, and I mean very few, a very low percentage, display or insinuate or suggest or claim that there's a paranormal attachment or aspect to it. Very few. And that's something we have to bear in mind. The vast majority of sightings are road crossings.
Yep.
Why would this thing bother walking across the road if it's a paranormal creature and it can use portals to transport itself from one dimension to another? I mean, roads are there for a reason because it's an easy pathway from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't this thing just float over the road and not be seen?
Yep.
Why aren't all witnesses seeing them disappear? Why are people seeing them raiding chicken coops? Why are people seeing them in dumpsters? Why are people seeing them, watching them sitting there in plain sight? Why do we have the PG film, the Patterson-Gimlin film? Why didn't Patty just materialize and vanish? So again, a very, very low percentage of sightings have any paranormal attachment to them. And then of those, did the witness really see what they thought they saw? Was it their mind playing tricks on them? Did they see an apparition? Because our mind does play tricks on us. Was it a misidentification? People say, "Oh, I found a track line. It disappeared." Well, it's what substrate did it disappear on? Because you can't track something on certain substrates, and it will appear. It will appear, or maybe it's smart enough to backtrack.
Yeah.
Are you smart enough to backtrack to see if it backtracked? Probably not, unless you took a tracking course. So I just think that evidence points to it being flesh and blood, to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm 100% in the same camp myself. There's too much physical, or like footprints, feces, feeding sites, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many alien footprints do we find?
I haven't found any.
Yeah, I'm still looking.
Todd, I know you've studied Patterson and Gimlin film pretty extensively. Can you tell us what you found in your study of the Patterson-Gimlin film?
I don't think I have anything new to offer because we're all watching the same thing with similar experiences. I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not a movement specialist. All I can say is I don't understand how people look at it and say it's clearly a costume. I don't understand that at all. To me, it's a bulky object. I mean, don't get me started with Bob Hieronymus because I keep saying this, but I'm going to make a video to really show that he was lying through his teeth. I just got to get around to it because I have to make sure all my I's are dotted, my T's are crossed, because there's a lot of skeptics who they have to believe that Bob Hieronymus was in a costume because Bigfoot does not fit into their box. So there has to be someone who was in a costume that day. And Bob Hieronymus is the only one truly who's come forward to make that claim. Others have said it was him, but those people themselves haven't said it was him or him. So I'm baffled that people just jump to the conclusion that it's a person in a suit. But that's the only conclusion that you can jump to if you don't think that Bigfoot exists. There's no other option. So I get that part. But when I look at it, I'm looking at it not as a believer, but I'm looking at it as someone who is, like you're a hunter, Gary and Billy. I'm sure you've done your share of hunting and fishing and camping and stuff. We all have experience, and each of it is different. You just know when something has mass, it's moving organically. It's not a costume. It's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, the butt looks a little weird. Looks like a diaper butt, as they say. I get that. But look at some gorillas' butts. They look like a diaper butt, but that's a real creature. Oh, well, look at the bottom of the foot. It's light colored. Really? Because we have humans with dark skin with light colored soles of their feet, light colored hands. Oh, but look at you can see like it looks like a hip waiter at the quadricep. Really? Because you look at bodybuilders, from a distance, and you're going to think they're wearing hip waders too. Then I don't get it, but I understand that if you're a skeptic, like an ardent skeptic, I like to call them cynics. You have to believe that it's fake. You have to, and you have to believe it's Bob Hieronymus because he's the only one that's come forth. But he's lying through his teeth.
Wasn't it that interview that you put up, or maybe I remember watching something else where somebody saw them going in on that day and there was only 2 people. There was not a third person with them going in.
Yeah. So that's Charles Edson, who was a sheriff, later on a sheriff of Siskiyou, if I'm saying that right, county. But he, that's why I had a little disclaimer saying that it doesn't mean that he saw them, because he had some funny stuff that he said, and he has a film that he claims was Bigfoot, and it really looks like a Ray Wallace suit, if you know Ray Wallace.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how much validity I want to give to that, but I said in my commentary, it adds another layer to things.
Yeah,
it really does. But I mean, the fact is, people don't realize that Bob Gimlin wasn't the only person asked to go there. There was another person who was asked to go there, and he declined because his wife said, "You're not going there for that long. You got to stay home, buddy. You're a father. You're a husband." So if Roger and Bob were planning a hoax, this guy said, I wasn't in on it. I mean, so are they going to hoax this thing in front of me? I might have a gun. It's hunting season. I might shoot this thing. Like Gary knows, he's an avid hunter. Like, you got a gun, you're gonna protect yourself, and you see something that you don't really know what it is, you might end up shooting it depending on the person, right? And then the fact that why would they go? What is it? I think 12 hours from Yakima to drive to Bluff Creek. Why would they do it in their backyard? In one of the local forests. There's some forests around Yakima, not a lot. And Yakima at the time had more sightings reported than the Bluff Creek area. It only made sense for Roger to stay in Yakima. Now, here's what people don't know. Bob Hieronymus first claimed in the beginning, when he came out with the story, that the film was made in a park in Eureka. These are things that people don't know. That was his claim in the beginning. So what does that tell you? He changed his story. People don't know that he was buying Bigfoot documentaries from Larry Lund in 1998. I've got a copy of the letter he sent to Larry asking for this documentary, that documentary. Why was he buying these documentaries? Because he wanted to study the film, so he had all his facts straight. People don't know these things. I'm
going to throw my hat in the ring there just a little bit, Todd, if you don't care.
Go ahead.
Bob Hieronymus' big claim was that he wore a suit made of a green horsehide.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand hide. Okay, a green horsehide is the hide has been removed from the animal. It's green.
Yeah.
It's not been tanned. It's not been anything.
Yeah.
Now, who's going to take a raw hide?
Yeah.
Strap that stinking thing all over you.
Yeah.
And
all the flies and bugs are going to be on you.
Exactly. And
Like
I don't
steak on a
remember
grill.
seeing a whole lot of bugs flying around Patty and that thing. If it had been a raw horsehide, he'd have been covered in flies.
And a bear would have been going.
Oh, yeah. And one thing, too, that you said for sure, if you're in the forest and you're trying to hoax something like that, one thing that you have to have in your mind the entire time is somebody could be out there with a gun. Not only could somebody be out there with a gun, but they may be scared of what they see. So you take somebody that is scared and add in the firearm, you're going to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. They were not able to control their environment. When you're hoaxing something, you want complete control. Look at when they do a movie, when they make a movie outside. They control that area. They shut it off. They have points of contact, making sure no one gets in, no infiltration. So there's no way. There's no way. Bob Hieronymus, he claims that he was able to go there for so long because his work was on strike in October 67. They weren't on strike. We know that for a fact. They were not on strike. We know where he worked. They were not on strike. He claims that Roger offered him $1,000, promised him $1,000. In 1967, a broke cowboy rodeo rider is going to promise you $1,000. Like, was Bob Hieronymus dumb?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, would you not get some payment up front? Like, hey, I'm going to need a little money here to do this. It just doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's part of why, you know, as much as the skeptics think that it bolsters their claim to say that Bob Hieronymus is making that claim, it actually hurts their claim because his whole story is full of holes.
Yeah.
It's a holy story, but not in a good way.
No, there's more holes in that story than 2 pounds of Swiss cheese.
There you go. There you go.
The next one, this may be a little touchy, but we're going to hit on this one right here. Todd, have you ever been following what you thought was Sasquatch sign, only to find out that you've been following a 13-year-old human girl?
Yeah, I don't like the way you worded it there, but yeah. So I'm going to try to keep it short. I was out by myself, way up north, a place called Lake Superior Provincial Park, close to Lake Superior, if you know your Great Lakes, largest Great Lake. And I'm walking up a trail, and it's a long trail. You get up to like a lookout point, and it's a pretty. It's not like a kept trail. It's pretty remote. It's pretty loosey goosey with, you know, slips, trips, and falls everywhere. Anyways, I'm walking up there by myself. It's afternoon, and I'm walking for a couple hours. Haven't seen a soul. But then I start finding these little stick structures on the pathway every, I don't know, let's say half mile or so. I can't remember, half mile. And I thought, what's going on here? And by the third one, I go, wait a second. Stick structures. Oh my goodness, because there have been reports in this area. So I'm thinking, oh my God, here I go. The Holy Grail. You know, I'm taking pictures of these things. I'm looking at them, right, analyzing them. And then I come up, I think I'm trying to remember, I came up over a hill, and then down kind of at the bottom of the hill, I see a girl crouched down. And I approach her. I'm like, this is weird. She looks young. This is really weird. She's out in the middle of nowhere. I'm thinking, am I imagining things? Have I been walking too long? Like, my blood pressure's high and I'm hallucinating. What's going on? So I catch up to her and I kind of startled her and I'm like, hey. She goes, oh, hi. And I said, where are your parents? She goes, oh, they're. I walked ahead of them. They let me run ahead of them. I'm thinking, this is not good. There's mountain lions, black bears, moose. This is a dangerous place. I've got bear spray ready to go in case. And I had seen a moose on that trip. It was a cow moose, but still, you don't know. Like it was fall time. Could have a calf. I don't know. But anyways, it turns out she was making these stick structures every half mile or so. And I thought, good Lord. And then her parents finally, I caught up with her parents. And I warned them. I said, listen, that's not safe. They were from, I hate to say it, they're from the U.S. They had no idea. They had no idea. And I'm like, oh, boy. But yeah, that was scary for her. And it was, it was an eye-opener for me because I automatically jumped to the conclusion that it's probably a Sasquatch. And I learned a lesson that day. Confirmation bias needs to be left outside. Yep. You know, left before, like, just don't even go there. Because a lot of people come with this evidence of stick structures, twist offs and, this and that. Nature works in miraculous ways. It does amazing things, and people don't realize that nature is creating these some of these things, these twist offs, that's nature at its finest. People don't realize that kids make structures. People don't realize that wilderness survival students, and I've been a wilderness survival student, took the same course that Les Stroud took at Humber College. We start making structures and we abandon them.
Yep.
And all these structures usually are found on well-used trails. Funny enough.
And not far off the trail either.
But Doug Hychek, Doug Hychek from Monster Quest, his theory is that perhaps Sasquatch is mimicking humans. So that's why they're making them close to trails. I honestly, I have much respect for Doug, but I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think it's people. When it's a well-used trail, let's put up a trail cam and see. And you're going to see kids adding to it, taking away. I did it when I was a kid.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, Gary, of that story.
It was a great story. The way I heard you tell it was phenomenal. I laughed. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it's a lesson, right? It's a lesson.
Yeah. I know that you've talked about in your archive studies that you found books that had listed in it Bigfoot, and you later come to find out that some of those were a Lakota chief.
Oh yeah,
named Bigfoot. I don't know how much you know about the Lakota chief Bigfoot. His real name was Spotted Elk.
Yeah,
and he was given the nickname Bigfoot by the U.S. Cavalry because he was a sizable man.
You're right.
And Bigfoot was later murdered in December the 29th, 1890 at Wounded Knee.
Right.
And a lot of people, they get hung up in that. They look for one thing and end up finding another. In your search for Bigfoot archives, have you come across anything else that might be misleading like that?
That's probably the most misleading for me because it was such a big event, an historic event. It's made its way into many books and magazines. So I've been duped a few times. It's not a bad thing, but I saw in the table of contents Bigfoot emerge, whatever the title may be, and I'm like, oh wow, I've never heard of this article, and I order it off of eBay or Abe's Books or wherever, Kijiji or Craigslist. It comes to my house, I'm like, oh, it's that guy. It's not the Bigfoot I'm looking for. But I'm trying to think. I don't know that there's anything else besides that's thrown me off. But what I do enjoy is going back into old newspaper archives and seeing the wild man / guerrilla reports, because they're clearly not wild men or guerrillas. They're neither. The description completely mirrors the descriptions of Sasquatch that we have today. I find that fascinating because that's something skeptics sort of gloss over. And I mean, newspapers wanted to sell newspapers back in the day, so there was some fudging of things, no doubt. I'm convinced that the whole jackal story in Yale, British Columbia, was a fabrication, and there's enough proof to say it was a made-up story to sell newspapers. But then there's other stuff, and it's all through the U.S., all through Canada, and interestingly enough, starting in the eastern states and provinces before the western states and provinces, for an obvious reason, because the West was settled later.
Yeah.
So really, when people say, well, like Peter Burns said, Sasquatch, Bigfoot doesn't exist east of the Rockies, and there's still people that believe that. I'm thinking, what? That is such a narrow way to look at things. Yes, there's a rich history, thanks to John Green, Rene DeHinden, Bob Titmus, J.W. Burns, Thomas Steenberg. I mean, those are all BC people, British Columbia people. Then Roger Patterson, right? And Bob Gimlin and everyone else that, and I hate to say it, but Ray Wallace and all those people, they all had a hand in this as well and a foot in this. And so people don't realize that the Eastern reports predate the Western reports, but the West gets all the attention because of the researchers that were out there. Ontario had no researchers like that. Thomas was born and raised in Ontario, but he joined the military and moved out west at a fairly early age and got his foot into the subject, pun intended, got his foot in the subject when he was already established in Alberta. And that's when he started writing his books. But there was no one in Ontario really doing what those guys were doing. So Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, they get overshadowed by British Columbia. And the same goes with California and Washington and Oregon. They overshadow the eastern states, New York, Pennsylvania. But there's as many reports, if not more. There really are. You guys know.
Yep.
So before Bigfoot become a term, people used the word booger, or wood booger, or the hairy man.
Yahoo.
Yeah, I mean, there was all kinds of, and there might be stories about the booger.
Yeah.
And, people will overlook that.
Exactly. That's the thing. And that's the thing that bothers me as skeptics. They just gloss over it. I mean, you can't ignore it. You can't, because they are describing what we commonly describe as a Sasquatch. It's not a man with a long beard, longer than Gary's, that, is running around in a loincloth or naked with a bit of hair. This is a 7-foot creature they're describing that's massive. That was leaving, and there's talk of footprints. I mean, show me someone in 1929 that had an 18-inch foot running around in BC. Chances are it's next to impossible. I mean, it's possible, but next to impossible. What's more possible is there's a hominid unclassified out there. As we had Neanderthal, we had Australopithecus. Well, who's to say there's not another one out there?
Yep.
That's true, Bill. Todd, what do you think is the best evidence that you have archived so far?
Well, I think most of us, not all of us, most of us agree that the Patterson-Gimlin film, if you're just speaking in general, or are you referring to my personal evidence? You
can do both. You can do both. That would be great.
Well, in general, it's definitely the Patterson-Gimlin film. Nothing really beats that, but there are other pieces of film and or video that I think are strong candidates. They just haven't got the attention, and I would like to see. It's unfortunate that they're on video, so they're pixelated. You can't do much with it, but there's a few of them out there that really intrigue me. It's just the Patterson-Gimlin film seems to be the most, like it's the longest one we have. It's close to a minute, right? Yeah. Whereas the other ones are just short, brief encounters. But judging by the reaction and the way the creature moved, I really like Michael Green's squeaky footage, the thermal footage.
Yep.
I'm sure, Bill, you met Michael Green probably before he passed.
Yeah.
Guessing. Yeah. Gary, did you ever meet Michael Green?
No, I didn't get the chance to meet him.
So for those who don't know, because a lot of people may not know Michael Green, he was a retired fraud investigator in New Jersey. So he comes from a very respectable occupation. He was salt of the earth, great guy, fearless, very tall man. I think 6'5", 6'6", maybe 6'7". Tall, lanky man. Great. He was in awesome shape. Would go up by himself for weeks at a time. And eventually he gets this thermal footage of this creature acting so strange. Now, they did a recreation on Finding Bigfoot with Bobo, and they determined that it was a human size, but they would have to know exactly where that thing was standing, because you move it back 20 feet, that's going to change the height and the dimensions substantially.
Yep.
Move it back 5 feet, it changes things. So you have to know exactly. So that's the problem with that recreation. But anyways, that footage, I think, is amazing. It's thermal with an old imager. It's not clear, but the behavior is exactly what people describe to a T. Very cautious, swaying, behind a tree, moving, crawling, grabbing the chocolate bar very cautiously because it knew something was there. It could hear the infrasound of the thermal imager, no doubt. It was like something's buzzing in the air because we don't hear that. Animals hear that. So, like trail cams, that's why they look at trail cams. They hear it, they know it's there, right? They smell it. So it knew something was up, so it was being very cautious. Love that footage. For me personally, I have not seen, I can't say for sure I've seen a Sasquatch. I may have seen a Sasquatch. It likely was, but I can't say it was. For me, it was more out in the woods by myself or with some other people, sometimes multiple witnesses, rocks being tossed at us when we know there's no one else there, because we know there's one road in and one road out. And if anyone was up on the ridge throwing rocks, how could they see us down there? We're hundreds of feet away from them. How do they know we're down there? They were rocks, unquestionably rocks. Another time, a massive tree got pushed down. when I was talking to 2 other people, something we heard it walking up this gravelly path, and all of a sudden there was dogs in a person's truck because she was walking her dogs strangely back in this remote area late at night because she had 3/4 wolves. They were mixed. And so she couldn't walk them anywhere else except for this place at night because they would eat other dogs. So she's walking these dogs and she lets them run free. And she said, yeah, a couple times they came running back to me, cowering, whimpering, as she heard something running on the path, like that would meet her, like, you know, like where it forms a T. She said, I got out of there because my dogs were cowering. They don't fear nothing. They feared something in that forest. Anyways, we met up with this lady, surprisingly. And yeah, something was shaking a tree, and this tree was massive. We couldn't see what it was because it was too far away, but we saw the tops of the tree doing this. My buddy and I, who's a big guy like you, Billy, a big guy, he's like, 6'2", 220, solid muscle. And we could not move that tree an inch. It's something. Yep. Now, could it have been a bear? It may have been a bear, but bears aren't known to be in this area. Honestly, they're not. It's a little closer to a city than you can imagine. And then also the wood knocks I've heard, like right after I do a wood knock or right after I leave my car, I'm getting my pack on, all of a sudden, hear that wood knock, that distinct percussive wood knock sound. And then 2 times I was bluff charged by something that I couldn't see that was clearly large, but it was able to stay out of my thermal view somehow. Wow. So those are things that really moved me.
Yep.
Well, Billy, that's all I've got for tonight, pal.
All right. Yeah, I think we all have those stories, Todd. I mean, we've experienced so many things. I mean, we could sit here and talk all night.
Absolutely.
About all the different things. But Todd, we appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy, so we appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was a great pleasure talking with both of you, Gary.
Excellent. I appreciate you.
Now, do you have time, Todd, to stay on until we go through the ending credits and all that stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll come back to you, so don't disappear.
I'll be right here waiting with my drink.
All right. All right. So before we get off the air, I just want to thank everybody for being on tonight. We like to mention some of the folks. I can only mention the folks that come in the chat room because we can't see you if you don't come in the chat room. But we got Tennessee Cherokee. We got George Garcia. We got Digger Dog. And these are all our regulars. Jeffy Smith. David Maddox. Let's see. Who else am I missing? Mick. Can't forget Mick with the ex-mom or the ex-wife's mom's green meatloaf. Let's see. Tom Steenberg, the good, Renee DeHenden impersonator.
Tom was here. Wow.
Yeah, Tom was here. Let's see. Who else we got? Slaughterhound. Good to see you. Let's see. I'm making sure I ain't missing somebody that was in the chat. You didn't see anybody I didn't see, did you?
No, sir, I haven't.
Joe Dryden. Joe Dryden. Yep, I mentioned Mick.
Good.
And then Joe Dryden. So thank you guys, all of y'all, for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. I will let y'all know that I developed a new website. It's Squatch, so not Sasquatch, but just squatchradio.com. The reason I did that is because this particular website is specifically designed for YouTube. So it's a website that is, the SEO and everything is set up to be best used with YouTube. So squatchradio.com, you can go see all the episodes. You can see our upcoming episodes, and it's also got a feature where if you want to put your email address in, it'll automatically send you the uploads and everything straight to your email. So just wanted to mention that. Of course, we got our Facebook page. There goes Mick again. You could probably use my ex-mom's meatloaf. Yeah, I know. We know, Mick. We know. Goodness. You know what? I think I need to put that in the SEO. We'll put in Mick's ex-wife's mom's meatloaf and see if that brings us more views.
It hurt us in the long run.
Y'all, we got our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sasquatch Watch Radio. And of course, y'all know how to get to our YouTube. So again, thank you all. We will see you next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Have a good rest of the week, and we will see you next week. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.